Gary Turner. He's co-founder and managing director of Xero. He'll tell you all about the company, and he's going to use the roving mic, so slight difference in style, which will help your learning styles as well.
Good morning. So I have to say, and just refer to our company as Xerox, which was great when we got going because we were checking into hotels and we said, can we put it on the company name? And they always offer to charge our hotel room to the Xerox account. And being a fine and upstanding business, we never actually did that, but it was always really funny. But so we're not the photocopier company. We're an accounting software company, which is possibly only slightly less boring. But doing something really special for small businesses. So how many people have heard of Sage accounting software? How many people have heard of Xero? Ah, not bad. Okay, we're doing okay. So we're kind of like a new, cooler, more interesting alternative to what people think of as accounting software. And so I'm not going to talk about accounting software today. I've been invited along to talk about innovation. So I'm really going to go really fast because I have about half an hour's worth of content and we're going to try and compress it to give some time for Q&A at the end. So our credentials as a business, we were a startup. We kind of still think of ourselves a little bit like a startup. We're only 10 years old, so we still have some of those kind of startup behaviors and ways of seeing the world. But we're pretty big now. So we've grown to 1,600 people around the world. We're coming on for 1 million businesses on Xero, getting on for a couple 100,000 businesses in the UK on Xero. So we're way beyond the early days of Xero as a startup. But a big thing for us has been innovation, and we were honoured to be named by Forbes magazine for 2 years in a row as their most innovative growth company. So those are my credentials for being here today. I'm going to go really fast. I love this quote. It talks about it frames really the challenge that businesses have with innovation, whether you're an established business as an incumbent and you have new kind of disruptive startups coming into your marketplace, or whether you're the disruptor, whether you're the person that's coming in and trying to challenge. And there's a bit of a bake-off that then happens between can the big company leverage its distribution and its brand and all of its assets and also learn how to innovate faster than the startup that only has the innovation and no customer and no brand and everything else. And I just love that. It really kind of perfectly kind of frames that whole debate for me. And we see a lot of that happening. Innovation happens at a much faster pace now. I mean, you think about innovation in terms of previous industrial cycles. It used to take centuries. It then took decades. In the last 10 or 20 years, it's taken maybe a number of years. I mean, how many people have either an Android smartphone or an Apple smartphone? Hands up. How many people have a BlackBerry? Okay, isn't that incredible? If I'd asked that question 10 years ago, at least half of you would have put your hands up to either using a BlackBerry and the other half would have been using Nokia. And nobody is represented by those brands. And I'll ask anyone on a Nokia. There's usually one. Oh, there's one. There you go. Apple stores and shopping centre. Technology now touches absolutely everything. I've been in technology for nearly 30 years, and I remember being really passionate about the kind of PC generation. It was all about individual productivity improvement. Give somebody a PC and a spreadsheet, and they'll just be much more productive. Give them an accounting software package or a payroll. Then it became about, why don't we connect these PCs together, and they can start sharing printers and resources. Then it became, well, it's okay that our accounts department have software, but why can't we give everybody in the organization software, so CRM and email? And you see the pattern here, that actually there's a very logical and linear development of the way that technology has impacted business. And actually today, technology touches everything, particularly when you have like smart voice agents like the Amazon Echo device or Apple's Siri. You should never say, hey Siri, in an environment like this. It never works. It's amazing. Sorry, I've got a lot of work to do. But technology is everywhere. It's societal now, the impact of technology. It's industrial. Steve Nealock was the kind of last kind of significant CEO at Nokia just before they were finally they gave up and were sold off to Microsoft. And Nokia didn't do anything wrong. you could argue that Nokia were great on innovation. I mean, the kind of the variety of colors and styles of smartphone or even just regular phone you could get from Nokia 10, 15 years ago was incredible. And they pioneered that kind of a novelty of mobile phone being almost like jewelry or an accessory. So they didn't do lots of things wrong. They just didn't innovate, and they didn't recognize that there was disruption coming. And so one of the things I want you to take away is actually, when it applies to technology today, because of the impact of technology being so broadly felt, it's no longer the case that you can wait and wait and wait and wait until everybody else irons out all the bugs, and then once you're really comfortable with a new product or new technology, then you adopt it. That's okay for TVs. So around about 2005, most of us didn't have big kind of flat screen TVs. And then pretty much everybody has a flat screen TV. And whether you bought one in 2005 or you bought one last week, well, the only difference is you got the benefit of it 10 years, 12 years ago, and you paid a lot more money for it. But actually, everybody now has a TV, and everybody's kind of equivalent to that. It's not the case with technology in a business context. It is very much the case that early adopters, the people that are on, not necessarily the very, very beginning, but the ones that move faster than the laggards and the late adopters actually gain a permanent advantage. And that never used to be the case. It used to be, well, I'll buy a photocopier or I'll buy a discrete piece of technology. You're now buying technology that proliferates throughout the whole organization. And the sooner you get that, the more organizational benefit you get. And that's a permanent change. And when you see like the disruption, I was in a cab in London, and one of the cool things about what Uber has done for the taxi industry in London is that they now have credit card swipe readers in them. And that's Uber's real legacy, because actually the real reason most people don't like using cabs is because how many people walk about with cash in their pocket anymore? And so Uber's real legacy, and that battle's not finished yet, but the cabs are now fighting back, and every cab now in London at least has a swipe, a credit card terminal. But the kind of lesson from cabs and Uber or any other disruption is find that disruption before it finds you. Clearly the taxi industry never, I mean, they could have easily have replicated the whole Uber experience. Addison Lee, huge taxi company in London, could have easily replicated the whole Uber experience, but didn't do that until it was like, oh my God, we're being massively disrupted here. And so find disruption before it finds you, because this disruption born by technology is coming at an ever-increasing frequency. It's no longer centuries or decades or even a few years. We're seeing disruption playing out in the space of a small number of years. And we're now in this perfect storm of Brexit. We're now in this perfect storm of, well, what then happens to the kind of Europe, our relationship with Europe, our relationship with our kind of provincial kind of states inside of the UK is up for debate in the next few years. We've got lots of kind of macroeconomic things happening, as well as having to deal with technology. And as if technology wasn't enough. It used to be slow-paced. It used to be moderate. It used to be predictable. Now we're in the situation where, having kind of unleashed this thing called the internet 25 odd years ago, we're now into a whole wave of new technology. It's very much my view that the first 10, 15, 20, 30 years of technology and computing, that whole revolution that we kind of were introduced to 20 odd years ago, which was remarkable in its own way, actually was really just a warm-up act for what's going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years. We had to wait until we had ubiquitous internet technology, smartphones in our pockets, cloud infrastructure, great new ways of kind of networking businesses and services and value together. And actually what we'll build in the next 10 or 15 years will be profoundly different to the technology that we've been used to over the last 20 or 30 years, which is both exciting for me as a huge technology nerd, but also quite scary. Quite daunting, because we're now moving into a realm where things are much less predictable. We have intelligent automation. We have our workforce that requires to be increasingly more liquid. Lots of these new dynamics are playing out in our people and our businesses. It's not just about buying some new technology, implementing it, and away you go. The implications of technology are now much more broadly reaching. Apologies for going really fast, but I've got loads of slides. Now, that's actually, that's Facebook. You know, so we're all pretty much all on Facebook. Actually, that's what Facebook looks like when it's not on your smartphone or on your screen. That's one of their kind of hosting centers in Norway. It's almost sci-fi looking. It's quite eerie. But we're now living in a world that's been driven by and automated by, and we're driving communication on, huge technological infrastructure, which again is a new phenomenon. And that actually introduces a whole new set of economics. We talk about the cloud. We're a cloud software company. We have millions of users, several hundred thousand, nearly 1 million businesses on Xero, doing all of their invoicing, doing all of their bookkeeping, working with their accountants, filing their taxes. And that's kind of interesting in the fact that, well, that means you can run it on your phone, or you can do it on a web browser, you can do it in a coffee shop, wherever you get internet. That's kind of like, we're over that now. That's tickets to the game in today's world of technology. It's how we then think about the application of new cloud technology to business processes, to how we service our customers. That's the interesting stuff. There's a guy called Bob Metcalf who, well, it must be 30 odd years ago, came up with this thing called Metcalf's Law. He was in telecommunications. It wasn't even internet in those days. It was sort of phones. And he came up with the Metcalf's Law, which sounds really scientific, and there is a point to this. And Metcalf's Law basically says the more nodes on a network, the exponential value accrues around that network. And what that looks like pictorially is if you have, like, the very first person with a fax machine. The fax machine, if you were the only person in the world that had a fax machine, pretty useless piece of technology. If one other person got a fax machine or a telephone, all of a sudden you could at least phone or send a fax to one other person. But what happens is when more people, telephones or fax machines or networks of value or customers of service attract to that network and connect to that network, then the value of that network goes off the charts, absolutely off the charts. And that's Metcalf's Law. And Metcalf's Law used to apply to things like telephones and fax machines, but Metcalf's Law now applies to discrete servicing value and customer relationships inside of your business because of what you can do in terms of leveraging technology. And there's a thing called Uber maths. And what Uber maths is basically Metcalf's Law. And basically, I think there must be like 100,000 Uber drivers in London now. And I always interview them and ask them, so how is it? What is it like to be an Uber driver? What is it like to be a node on this network? And they're adding more and more drivers all the time. And the Uber drivers are worried that, well, they keep adding more Uber drivers to the network, and actually, I'm not going to have any more business. Actually, the more availability, the more utility and value in that Uber network, the more people will use it. And actually, all the value goes to Uber. The drivers still earn the same amount of money, so they're still as busy. But if there was 200,000 drivers, that doesn't mean that there's half of the amount of work for all the Uber drivers, because the kind of network, the value is elastic. And that is just one example of how innovation in business, and we think about this a lot, is you're increasingly becoming scientists if you're in business. I have a guy in our marketing team, and he's like an expert on search optimization and online advertising. And I speak to him, and I have no idea what he's talking about. He talks to me, and I'm like, it sounds like you know what you're doing. I'll let you crack on. And he's like, and actually, he's a scientist. He should have a lab coat on, because he's not a marketer anymore. Marketing used to be about creativity and kind of taste, and it's actually about science and bits and widgets and people visiting your website and their behavior. We're all becoming scientists, and if you might not need to have them in lab coats, but really think that business is becoming a science. And all of that kind of adds up to, I feel really excited about the next few years. I mean, I'm generally more excited than most people about technology, but in the last 2 years, it's just gone off the charts. Automation, machine learning, voice recognition, autonomous cars, all of the network disruption that we have is incredible. It's very hard to predict where you should be focusing. And really, if I've achieved anything today, it's to kind of get you thinking about, well, what does it mean in my business? What does it mean, whether you're a startup, whether you're a 30-year-old company or not? Innovation and the way things are moving in the next 10 years will be remarkably different to what we've seen. Just one example of that. So I mean, I've got an Apple Watch. One of the kind of things that would be pretty cool is that you, instead of having to sit down in front of a PC and kind of run a report to see what your business is doing, then just look at your watch, and then you've got machine learning and automation in the background, just sharing with you important notifications, things that you need to know when you need to know them, rather than having to kind of run your business in that old-fashioned way. We're currently experimenting with chatbots. So as I said earlier, we're pretty much all on Facebook. Those numbers are probably out of date. But there's many, many businesses now on Facebook. How many people have a page on Facebook for their business? Okay, about a third of you. So it might seem a bit weird having a Facebook page for your business, because Facebook's a kind of social thing. And actually saying to a business, you need a business page on Facebook is a bit like, in my view, in 1996, saying to business, you need a website. Because in 1996, what's a website? Why would I do that? Isn't that some kind of weird technical thing? Now you wouldn't consider, the very first thing you think about for your business, actually, for starting a business, oh, we need a website. And actually, Facebook's pretty much the same thing. But you build a website because that's where your customers are. You build a Facebook page because that's where your customers are. So if there's one thing you take away is that at least go and create some kind of presence on Facebook for your business. But lots of people are looking for things on Facebook. Lots of people are looking for business connections on Facebook, referrals, connections. Does anyone in my network know anything about accounting? Can you recommend an accountant? Can you help me with something? So we thought it would be interesting to play, well, what is that kind of integration with a product like Xero, which manages your books and balances and everything and keeps your cash? What would that look like in a Facebook context? So I actually haven't got it live here because we're on different technology. But this is a real thing. We're trialing it. It's kind of it's a bit of fun technology. But I've captured in fact, I've just realized it won't work because I'm not using my own technology. So I'm going to have to, this is like the worst technology demonstration ever. What I was going to show you, I just realized that's not my laptop, is this way of on Facebook actually, like show me my numbers, like report on my kind of cash flow today. Who's paid me? Who's not paid me? What is my business running? And throwing questions at it. And so if you haven't already played with chatbots on Facebook for any kind of thing, and it could be a brand you're interested in buying something from, or you're trying to book a holiday or something like that, you can now engage with these businesses either on their website or on Facebook. I apologize, that was the worst demonstration ever. A massive grainy thumbs up on an iPhone screen. But it's amazing, and the stuff online. So if you Google for Xero and Facebook Messenger, then you'll see the actual video of it. Apologies. But the way that would work, and that's on Facebook Messenger, it could just as easily be on your own website, is providing this kind of 24/7 concierge. Somebody comes to your website, has a question about your product. They don't want to phone you because people don't like picking up the phone these days. And actually just want to, does your product do this? What price is that? What about this widget? And you can actually build a degree of automation and smart intelligence into your website now to talk to these people so that they maybe end up becoming a customer. And so we're thinking about the applications of chatbot service for our sales team, for customer service, for lots of aspects of our business, because we think not everybody's cup of tea. Frankly, I'd probably rather just do my own research than talk to some kind of robotic agent at the back end. But there's a whole generation of people entering business today that absolutely would resent having to pick up the phone to speak to you about your product or service. Like they've got smartphones and the phone part is invisible to them. And so it's adapting the way that you present your business to the world in a way that's appropriate to the different segments and different preferences out there. So things like, does Xero do invoicing? When is my VAT return due? And we're thinking about it would be really cool to then connect that up with not just your accounting data, but get your accountant in the loop as well. And so kind of interesting things there. That would have been a much better demonstration had it actually worked. Anyway. And so I'm going to wrap up. Apologies if I've gone like 100 miles an hour here, but I think that right now, as I said earlier, I'm incredibly excited about the next 10 years, 15 years. I'm actually slightly disappointed that it's taken this long into my career for technology to get so interesting. But it's incredible, and not just the work that we're doing, but I think that we're actually now in a kind of golden age, an almost renaissance period for small businesses, particularly for startups. We're massively passionate about the small business economy and the small business community. There's 5.5 million businesses in the UK, and something like 98% of them are small, represented by many of the people here today, or at least you'll have connections with them. Our small businesses contribute over 50% of our British GDP and account for nearly 2/3 of all employment in the UK. And we're driven by the mission as a software company to help those small businesses. If we could affect just a 5% improvement in the productivity of small businesses, that has a profound impact at a kind of economic scale. Just not 50%, not 100%, just a 5% improvement in the productivity, the efficiency, or the profitability of small businesses will drive our economy through what will be in the next few years some pretty choppy waters, I think, a lot of unpredictability, create employment. And we think that technology, the application of innovation, cool things like machine learning, and actually connecting networks together, and many of the things that I've covered this morning will be some of the key ingredients that will see us really progress, not just in terms of the productivity of small businesses, but the economy as a whole. So thank you very much for the invitation to come along, and I may have some time for some questions, but thank you.
I wish I was young again. I was totally inspired by some of those insights personally, so I hope you were. We've got 10 minutes or so, well, 7 minutes for questions to Gary. So we'll do the same. Stick your hand up if you would like to ask a question or probe something. Yeah, there's one up there. Any more? One in the middle of the balcony. Oh, and one at the front here. Brilliant. Okay, we'll take the balcony first and then get this. Have we got another mic or not?
You can have this one and I'll go back. I'll go into the mic.
Yeah, okay. If we can give the mic to the guy in the pink shirt.
Okay.
And then you and I can, well, you can shout. Okay, question up there.
Hello. I'm Alan Wilson from Expandly. We're actually an app partner of Xero. My question's, what effect does pricing have on innovation? So Xero, phenomenal platform, etc. But the pricing, I think, cut a lot of it. I mean, is pricing low value, low cost? Is that going to be a trend all over all SaaS products?
Let's take the other question.
Yep,
as well,
yep.
some pricing, and then go for it.
On quite a different area. Paul North from Illuminis Insight Software. We provide software helping people get insights from the data they've got in things like Xero and so on. I was intrigued by your slide showing mainframe going down to mini to PC and the way that's been a real evolution. I see a real potential at the moment, big evolution in terms of big data, which we're all hearing about at the moment, going down to small data, which I think for the SME world will make a big difference, and I'd be interested in your comments.
Sure. So I'll try and quickly answer both of those very different questions. Pricing, regardless of how you're delivering it, whether you're a traditional kind of hand-carved kind of manufacturer of something or a digital business, ultimately there has to be some equity with the value that's being delivered to the customer. Our pricing, so we service hundreds of thousands, nearly 1 million businesses, and so we are very much so Xero's for most people like £22 a month, so it's like less than you'd pay for like Sky TV. So something like SAP or Oracle, you'll be paying a significantly bigger bill than that for accounting software. And so ultimately the answer, big subject, but you should charge what you think is a fair price for your product, and that just because you're connected with our platform and we're £22 a month doesn't mean you shouldn't be £122 a month. It's all down to the value. In terms of data, so data's huge. Big data has been around as a talking point for about 5 or 6 years now. I get the theory of it. We're now at the point where we are now seeing kind of interesting pools or buckets of data emerging. So for example, on our platform, in the last 12 months, there's been £1.2 trillion worth of transactions processed by Xero customers globally. All the taxes, like everything they spent their money on, all revenue, and the ability for us to then play that back to our customers to say, here's at least some basic benchmarking about how you compare. So you're a kind of photographic services business in Milton Keynes. How do you compare with your peers in Milton Keynes? How do you compare with businesses in your same category across the rest of the UK? Where could you improve? And so there's some practical insights from that. We also think that we're building some machine learning models that will actually make accounting simpler. Although we make accounting much easier for businesses to get up and running with, not everybody's an accountant. And there's, we think, a lot of unnecessary complexity in just doing accounting that your typical entrepreneur or small business owner doesn't need to see. So for example, if you've got a bill in from BT and you're sitting down and you're trying to code that against your accounts, and you think, well, I'm not sure where to code this. Is it telephone rental? Is it telephone charges? Is it IT and telephones equipment? Because your chart of accounts might have multiple instances of the word telephone. and then you choose the wrong one, then Xero should know, no, actually that's not the right one because 5,500 people already coded it to that one. And so we can teach Xero using that data to kind of make accounting kind of invisible. It'll still be there, but you'd have to worry about picking from a big long list of codes. So lots more to come on that.
Okay. Happy with those answers, both of you? Great. And then there's another, very happy. If you could just pass the microphone there. Great.
Hi there, my name's Emerson Patton from Bright Business Advice, and I have to say that I use Xero as well. It's a great tool.
Cool.
And in fact,
I didn't pay for all these people to come, by the way.
And at my events, I always persuade people that they should be thinking about using it. So I want to talk to you about a referral partnership. But aside from that, obviously the thing that I love about Xero as well, not only does it do the accounts, it does all the other integrations because you can pull lots of other software partners in to make businesses hang together well. And I just wondered, you know, where you see the components of pulling other parts of business together, what are the majority sort of apps that you're seeing in the small business space? Because I help the small and medium-sized businesses, so that's what I'm interested in. You know, the other parts to tie it all together, so you can make it seamless. That's the
definitely. I mean, so really quick answer to that. So I mean, so we do the accounting stuff. But you can connect your accounting now on the cloud up to, we have 600 other systems, tools, packages that do other things that you connect into Xero. And one day that will be more than 1,000. So that really goes to that kind of whole Metcalfe's law thing. Actually, we'll to a degree be able to curate them to some extent, but there's way more out there than we could ever actually kind of like identify, and ultimately the customers will determine through merit and which ones are great value are the ones that are working. But the point is, it's all about connections. It's all about connecting systems, services, people, customers, suppliers, the whole ecosystem, banks, everybody around that small business, whether that's an app like ours or other apps in there. And we're now in that generation. That's one of the characteristics of this new cloud automated world that we're now moving into. Completely different to business technology 20 years ago. Sorry, not a great answer to your question,
maybe
but
you can pick that up if you
big subject.
Yeah. Further over coffee. Thanks, Emerson. And Gary, with huge public apologies for my senior moment, Xero.
That's all right.
I will never forget the business called Xero, and I don't use it at the moment, but you know, I feel I ought to be doing. But with huge apologies, as I say, can we thank Gary for your
Thank you.
input?
Thank you.